The test began. A bald man raised his hand and with a confident expression decided to be the first. The attention of the others focused on him and their eyes filled with surprise and confusion. With an uncertain gaze, the man who had a cane turned toward him and asked him to do it well and not get nervous. The bald man fell to his knees before him, and while his eyes were shining with determination, he placed his hand over his chest, addressed him as Lord Baron, and asked him to remain calm, assuring him that he would not disappoint him. Baron's attention was fixed on him and an evil smile began to spread across his face. He promised that, as long as he performed well, he would set him free and could even become a true noble of the firmament. Upon hearing this, the bald man's eyes widened with joy. He promised to do his best. Lu Sheng, who was standing behind, began to observe him in silence. His gaze was fixed on his tattoo, which indicated that he was a slave. With a serene expression, Lan extended his hand and with a smile explained that many hereditary nobles of outer space, when faced with stagnation at power level 11, feared losing their titles due to lack of strength. For this reason, they did everything possible to recruit martial talents through various channels, the interstellar slave market being the most common one since young people with good martial potential occasionally appeared there. Lu Sheng did not say a single word and sank into his thoughts. While our boy was staring silently at the bald man with a lost expression, Lan approached Lu Sheng and, while his eyes were shining with confidence, he mentioned that, after all, not everyone had the power to control their own destiny like Lu Sheng. Those who desperately sought to maintain their noble titles were willing to do whatever was necessary to control a powerful martial cultivator. With an expression full of surprise, Lu Sheng turned toward Lan and questioned why the nobles did not recruit them within their own territories. Lan closed his eyes and after giving the matter some thought, told Lu Sheng that he was overthinking it. He explained that it was easier to win the grand prize in the interstellar lottery than to expect a genius with top-level talent to be born in a small piece of land. He began to imagine himself lifting Lu Sheng after he came in first place. He considered that, although he had found Lu Sheng in the White Nebula and brought him back, this was basically like having won the jackpot of the stellar lottery. A thought that made him laugh inwardly. The stellar disc of destiny was activated. It was gigantic. The bald man approached it and began to observe it in silence. Ready to begin, he concentrated and transformed his energy into a powerful blade, then carefully made a cut on his palm, causing his blood to start emerging. While his eyes were shining with determination, he placed his hand on top of the stellar disc of destiny and martial flames began to emerge from his hand and enter into the disc. Not long after, one of the pearls of the stellar disc began to shine intensely. Everyone's attention was fixed on it, leaving them somewhat confused. The bald man began to touch his head and his eyes widened in confusion and surprise. He couldn't believe that he had only activated one pearl. Baron got angry and started kicking the ground to vent. With a furious expression, he called the bald man an idiot and demanded that he spin it. He ordered him to spin the stellar scheme with all his strength. With a gaze full of determination, the bald man grabbed the stellar disc, let out a sigh and prepared to spin it. He concentrated and using all his strength decided it was time to spin the stellar disc and show everyone how powerful he was. Even though he used all his strength, nothing happened. The stellar disc did not move even a single centimeter. Everyone began watching in silence, not knowing what was happening. The bald man decided not to give up so easily, and while his eyes were shining with rage, he decided to summon his martial spirit. A powerful martial spirit appeared. It grabbed the star disc and prepared to spin it. Upon seeing the powerful spirit, Lan's eyes widened in surprise and his jaw dropped, realizing that its power was level 9. Its martial spirit measured 7,000 meters and the level 10 demonic trident barely reached 8,000 meters. His talent was quite good, but a talent of this level did not attract the attention of any of those present. Finally, the efforts of the bald man began to bear fruit as the pearl that had previously been activated began to shine even more intensely. Upon seeing this, Baron's eyes filled with joy, making a smile appear on his face. He could not believe that the pearl was shining. Not long after, another pearl began to shine intensely, but the bald man could no longer go on and fell to the ground. Lu Sheng remained calm and his attention was fixed on him. It didn't take long for him to realize that spinning this stellar disc of destiny completely exhausted the strength of a level 9 warrior. He found this stellar disc of destiny quite interesting. Mo Yun, who was holding his magic staff, approached the bald man, extended his hands and announced that 2 bright pearls had lit up. His life condition level was extraordinary 2 stars and did not meet the admission standards. The bald man's eyes widened in fear, making him sweat like crazy. Faren exploded with rage and cursed the slave traders. They had assured him he was a genius of more than 5 extraordinary stars, but he turned out to be useless. This was a complete scam. Faren's men grabbed the bald man by the arms and began taking him back to the spaceship cell. He couldn't help crying and feeling sad. Afterwards, the others began to go up one by one to take the test. Shang crossed his arms and began to ponder. He knew there was no rush. After observing and asking Lan, he had understood well the evaluation criteria of the Destiny Star Disc. The level of extraordinary life condition was determined at the very moment when blood fell on it. The disc's evaluation system was clear. White light indicated an extraordinary level, blue represented the Dawn Star level, and yellow corresponded to Bright Moon level. Red light, for its part, signified the highest level of all, Radiant Sun level. Up until that moment, the highest level reached among all those evaluated had been Dawn Star. The warriors who had taken the test and failed were furious and exhausted. Most were far below standard. Only a few who reached Dawn Star level managed to attract attention. But not even among them was there anyone who made the director say the word approved. A long-haired warrior began to walk toward the star disk in silence, with an expression full of determination. He extended his hands, concentrated, and began to use his power, ordering the disk to spin. His power was so immense that a powerful wave of energy began to emerge from his body. The other warriors covered their faces and could not avoid going into shock. The disc began to spin rapidly. First 1 pearl started to shine until several seconds later, 7 pearls began to shine intensely. Upon seeing this, Mo Yun could not help but smile. He extended his hands and with a smile announced that the constitution of the warrior was extraordinary, of 7-star Dawn Star level, and that it met the admission standard. The other warriors were so shocked they were petrified. No one could believe what their eyes were seeing. An old man with a beard, next to a beautiful woman with elf ears, began to walk toward the warrior named Faren. He began to touch his beard and praised him, telling him that he had done very well, and that he knew he had not been wrong about him. He assured him that, from that day on, no one else could come between him and Lilith. The father placed his hand on his daughter's back and with a smile promised that upon returning, he would immediately arrange their wedding, and told Lilith to go now to meet her husband. Faren remained silent. Lilith turned toward her father and nodded her head. With a nervous expression, she approached her future husband and congratulated him. But far from being happy, Faren completely ignored her. He began to wave his hand in denial and with a cold expression mentioned that there was no need to say anything else. He told the Viscount that it was no longer necessary, since in reality, he and Lilith were not compatible. After saying this, Faren turned his back on them and began to walk away. The eyes of Lilith and her father widened in surprise and confusion, leaving them in shock. Lilith could not contain her emotions and began to cry, not knowing why Faren had changed his mind. With an angry expression, she lunged at her father, insulting him and shouting that it was all his fault. The father could not help but panic, not knowing what to do. Faren walked away from them and passed in front of Lan. Lan's attention was fixed on him, and with a serene expression he mentioned that this was a classic cliché. The one who was once despised is now unattainable. With a cheerful gaze, Lan crossed his arms and explained to Shang that this was precisely the risk of finding talents within one's own territory. After investing effort and resources into training a genius, they, upon becoming famous, could turn their backs without hesitation. For this reason, when investing in someone, one had to consider not only their talent, but also their character. Shang approached him and while his eyes shone with curiosity, he sank into thought. He began to touch his chin and with a smile concluded that the Viscount was clearly the type who treated his daughter like merchandise, betting everywhere only to end up with nothing. To him, this was normal and he questioned what kind of character they were talking about. Then he asked Lan what he thought of his character. Lan put his arm around Shang's neck, extended his hand and with a smile told him that someone who took some time every day to talk to their ordinary family, who lived 500 light years away, could not have such a terrible character, even if he did. He mentioned that, according to what they said, this was part of the moral traditions of his dragon kingdom, something he found very admirable. Our boy began to gaze toward the ground in silence. Lan began to stare at Shang and with a smile asked him to look at Lan Ge. He explained that it was finally his turn and that he was the real target of this test. All the others could be considered only his supporting cast. With a curious gaze, Shang raised his head. Lan Ge went up on stage and began to walk toward Mo Yun calmly, with a confident expression. Mo Yun asked him to do his best. Lan Ge's eyes began to shine and he nodded. Lan Ge closed his eyes and began to concentrate, gathering his martial energy in his forehead. Not long after, a third demonic eye appeared on his forehead. While his body was emitting a powerful red aura, Lan Ge extended his hand and decided it was time to show everyone how strong he was. Everyone started watching attentively, as they knew this test had been organized almost exclusively for Lan Ge. He had inherited the noble blood of Marquis Lan Nuo, a powerful level 13 warrior, and everyone wondered what kind of constitution he would have. When Lan Ge spun the stellar disc, the pearls began to emit an intense golden glow. The other warriors couldn't help but panic and sweat, realizing that it was bright moon level. Mo Yun remained calm. It was just as they expected, since he was not someone ordinary. Lan Ge extended his hands and fire began to emerge from his body, and not long after, his martial spirit began to manifest. Little by little, Lan Ge's martial spirit started to grow larger and larger. While its body was surrounded by martial flames, it became enormous. Compared to it, the stellar disc looked like a toy. Lan's eyes widened in surprise, as he couldn't believe that the height of his spiritual manifestation had reached 50,000 meters. Thanks for watching Vivify Recaps. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and drop your next recap request in the comments. See you in the next one.